DeepSeek R1 has just dropped less than a week ago, and it has all of these CEOs and top people in the US scrambling. People from all the way from the government agencies to even normal folks who are actually searching for this app in the App Store. It has actually now become the number one app available for you to use. And this is basically a language model that seems to the question we need to figure out is this actually on par or better than what's currently available in the US with ChatGPT O1? And so today we're going to be going over some of this information in a lot of detail here. And as of now, in Google Trends, DeepSeek has currently surpassed ChatGPT with the search terms as well as Claude. Just today, this is just really kind of breaking news right now. And I have with me LDJ Confirmed, who's actually an AI engineer, and he's actually working to train these models and so forth. So he's an expert in this field, and he's here to provide and ask and provide an important detail and figure out, like, are these models actually that intelligent? Are they that good at doing what they do? Can they surpass like USA's like super intelligence that we're claiming, impossible and beyond? So LDJ, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Cool, man. So,
Yeah,
dude, DeepSeek, like, this is crazy as far as people who are using it to code. I was using it to code, and it looks like you're able to do all this stuff with reasoning. That seems very similar to ChatGPT O1, and just kind of wanted to get your opinion as far as like what are you thinking as far as how this model is working, and kind of some of the thoughts right now with what's been happening with people scrambling around. Is this like the next level of super intelligence and stuff?
yeah. Well, to start off with the question of how is it working, there's luckily they've open sourced everything, or they've open sourced the weights and the ability to run the run the models on your own hardware if you wish, although it's going to require a lot of resources to run the full thing. But we could see that when these reasoning models, at least like R1, are actually working, it's actually just a single stream of really long output, where a lot of people were originally assuming when models like O1 from OpenAI came out that it's doing this complex like system of running like Python scripts of prompting itself and this and that, and maybe running a bunch of things in parallel and picking the best one. But it really does seem like the most optimal way that R1 is doing it, and likely O1 has been doing it as well, is really just having this training technique implemented to where the model itself is able to learn how to reason for very long amounts of time within a single stream of output, and that ends up with a better answer.
Got it. And so what that means is like the model will actually kind of output more intelligent thoughts to people who are using this. And so it's really interesting because I was just taking a look at Mark Andreessen's recent post, and he basically shows right here, it says like DeepSeek AI assistant is now taking over ChatGPT. And he's more specifically claims that DeepSeek's R1 is AI's Sputnik moment. So
Mm.
what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that's a really good analogy. Being number one on the App Store, I think there's a lot of factors that played into that. But if we rewind a little bit, let's say, I want to say at least a few weeks, maybe a little bit more than over a month ago, we did have other open source reasoning models already out, such as QWQ from Quen, which is also happens to be a Chinese company like DeepSeek. And then you also had from, I believe, a Canadian company actually called Riliad, and that was like a 7 or 8 billion parameter reasoning model that does the similar technique. But this really seems to be maybe the first one with R1 where it's truly reaching kind of like in the main popular benchmarks, such as the Math Olympiad qualifying exams. It reaches really at that O1 level where others fall significantly short.
Ah,
And I think it's there where it's a combination of the fact that they've achieved that, as well as released just recently a technical report on this. And I think they already had, I want to say, R1 preview, or even the full R1 model available for people to use, I want to say, at least for a week or two, or maybe even three. But it's just around a week ago that they released a technical report that kind of unveiled a lot of the details of how they're doing things. And then just ever since, oh, roughly a week ago when they released that, alongside, I think they had, of course, the online chat application, just like ChatGPT, and the actual mobile app as well for people to use. It's just been gaining so much popularity since then.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's amazing. Cause like, I think the other question people ask about the compute is like, can you just throw, like, can they just throw more, GPUs at this and more types of things? And also like, on top of that, does that mean that like NVIDIA is totally cooked, right? Like, did they invent a new way of reasoning here, in this paper or something that like totally eliminates the need for NVIDIA's like TPUs or whatever they're doing and stuff?
Yeah, I think if we look at this with a tunnel vision of looking at specifically just these capabilities and O1 capabilities, yes, it is showing that you only maybe need a few $1 million to achieve such capabilities. However, I think it doesn't necessarily reduce the demand much for NVIDIA GPUs, because I think what a lot of people are missing is not only is there this inference time scaling where it could spend more compute to come to better answers, but there's also the actual reasoning reinforcement learning scaling where you can have more compute in that training of it basically in a way teaching itself to reason better and better, and that then ends up with better results. But then on top of that, you also have something just called the original pre-training scaling laws, which some people have kind of called into question whether or not they'll continue as is. I think it's likely there's going to have to be new forms of data, like more multimodal data, like with video data and things like that, to help supplement the lack of web data that we're currently hitting.
Mm.
But it does seem like just these multiple directions of being able to scale the compute to get better and better models and better results. I think that will continue to play a role.
Oh, that's interesting. So, where are we in this timeline of things? Because I think, like, can you go back and kind of explain the leaps of intelligence that have happened like, from GPT-2 to 3 and so forth? And then, kind of, where does this reasoning model with DeepSeek fit in with the class of OpenAI models? Because like you were explaining, not all models are the same. There's small models, there's large models, there's different capabilities. And so we just kind of like an understanding of kind of where we are in this like scale and that people talk about, and would love to have you kind of break it down a little bit.
Sure. So, in terms of, I think just to briefly first talk about, I think what you can call algorithmic efficiencies or training efficiency improvements. There's been cool research done by organizations like Epoch AI that show a lot of times, even though it could seem like these advancements or kind of training efficiency advancements are sporadic and kind of spontaneous, they do actually seem to follow a relatively clear line over time of it's roughly 2 to 6x per year, and then you can kind of average that more over time. And it does seem like DeepSeek V3 is just kind of like it's like another data point that's also following that curve over the past few years.
Mm.
And I think it's reasonable to suspect that OpenAI and others actually maybe have similar algorithmic efficiencies already or not that far behind for their latest models. At least maybe GPT-4o and maybe Anthropic, since they seem to be quite ahead in research. And just for a scale of the cost that we're talking about, DeepSeek V3, there's this commonly reported number of about $5 million.
Mm.
And a lot of people have been calling that into question, saying this is it sounds like BS, it sounds like a sham. And I have like ran some numbers myself on their own published research, and it does seem like that is in line with the actual cost that I calculated. However, I think what a lot of people are getting wrong is assuming because of various news headlines that things like GPT-4o and Cloud 3.5 are like in the billions or hundreds of millions of dollars. And that's a big misconception right now. That is a lot of the money being invested for future models. However, these current models, they are estimated closer to, like Ray has on the stream here, they are estimated closer to likely significantly less than 50 million,
Oh, wow.
very possibly even less than 20 million. And so that would still, that's getting roughly pretty close already to the DeepSeek V3 range. And then if you look at something like Llama 3.1405b, that's an open source model Meta released, and that's a lot of people are kind of wrongly comparing to that, but that's just pretty inefficient for various reasons. I think they're mostly just focused on kind of having a dense model to compare their research over time to their previous ones. And I think combinations of that along with they do have, I think, more efficient things planned for Llama 4. We can go into that another time maybe.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, you could see that significantly more. And then of course, for the first half of 2025, we have these models that have recently been training, like Grok 3 and others, that, they're on the scale of more like $500 million of compute. And I think those are probably implementing some things likely much more training efficient than something like Llama did. And I think that we'll end up with something significantly better than anything we have available today.
Wow, that's amazing. And so, do you think that like these whatever's happened with DeepSeek that they'll be able to kind of catch up as well, or is it just a matter of just not having these resources available? Like, can they
Yeah,
just
so
throw
I
more compute
guess,
to their? I think that was kind of the other thing that
mhm.
people think. Just like if you just put more compute at it, and you're saying about the data stuff, can they still end up with similar results, or can they find another breakthrough? Or I guess,
Yeah, so I think it's very possible that an organization, at least like OpenAI, might have similar training efficiency already to DeepSeek V3, like I described. But even if we say, let's say that DeepSeek in China are even 10x training efficiency ahead, let's say they have such a leap. When you look at the long-term scale, such as something like even the Grok 3 scale models, and OpenAI is inevitably training things like that on that scale of compute as well, then even if DeepSeek V3 has a 10x training efficiency advantage, they would still need something like a 50 million compute training run to match a $500 million training run.
oh,
And this continues, of course, let's say the big American players are doing $5 billion training compute runs. And then again, even if DeepSeek has a 10x training efficiency advantage, they would still need a $500 million of training compute in order to match the capabilities of what the American companies are getting with 5 billion.
wow, wow, wow. That's pretty massive. And where are we in terms of timelines of scales of things? Because it seems that to train these models, there's like a certain lead time because of how much data they're doing and crunching. And I think GPT-4 was just released what in late 2003, early, I don't remember as far as timelines and scales.
20, I think you mean 2023. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 2020. If
But yeah, early 2023. It was trained in 2022. As you could see, I kind of put a label for that in the chart here. And for these upcoming models, I think they're likely to release in this quarter, if not sometime in the first half of 2025 at least, so maybe second quarter of 2025. And that's at the on the top bar. And I think likely, of course, XAI is basically confirmed to have such a scale model, and I believe OpenAI likely has been training one the past few months as well. It's suspected maybe Google has too. And for that, that's something we can expect soon within the next few months. But I think longer term, on the order of 12 to 18 months, it's suspected that training runs will already get on the scale of about 10x above that. So that would be closer to around 3 billion, $5 billion training runs. And that would be of if you kind of go back in time, I remember you asked me a question of what have the previous leaps been. GPT-2 to 3 has been about 100x, and GPT-3 to 4 has also roughly been another 100x jump in training compute. And kind of the first 100x training compute above the original GPT-4 that we would get is on these kind of 12-month, 18-month training runs that are expected that would be 100x above original GPT-4.
Wow. So at the very top line, this big bar that we're seeing at the very top, this when these training runs are done in 2025 or the whatever they're doing, could cost in the $500 million range, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, we're talking about 100x the leap from GPT-4, and that estimate for training here was just a little over $10 million or something, somewhere in this range here. What that was Claude 3.5 Sonnet. So if you can see the big leap, ladies and gentlemen, like, and this is a logarithmic scale, so this is massive, right? So we're talking from tens
Mhm.
to like, not 50 million, like to add another zero. And that's kind of why it's so important to have this data, right? That these people are asking for data and all these different techniques to kind of push this together, because it does take quite some time for this to happen. And it sounds like with the US, we're just basically barely around the corner from just a big nuclear bomb drop as far as like the AI space. Be like, yo, you thought that was cool, kids? Maybe something, can be even bigger here. And so in terms of like response from like these bigger companies, it almost makes sense kind of why they're a little bit silent, is because it's just kind of cute, maybe. And then maybe they have something bigger. What do you think? Do they have something like that's just going to be jaw dropping here? Or am I just kind of going, a little too optimistic here?
Yeah, so I think there is a factor here of them already knowing. When I say them, I mean like XAI, OpenAI, those companies already kind of knowing that they have something significantly better and bigger in the works already. However, I think in the short term, as of the past week and as of probably the coming weeks, it is a little bit of a kind of uh, not good look PR wise, and it is a little bit of a risk, or maybe not even a little bit, maybe significant risk to, let's say, the actual mind share and user base. Because as you saw, there's already more Google search popularity for DeepSeek even than Claude now, even above ChatGPT now. And the fact that they're number one on the App Store, it does seem like, I think there's a lot of factors at play here, like the attractive story of the underdog kind of creating this thing, and it's available for free. And it is actually a good model, I'll say. It is actually integrated well. It even has internet search abilities apparently, whereas O1 doesn't even have internet search connection with ChatGPT yet. There is these various advantages for the consumer, and I think they just kind of really need to get these those $500 million scale models out soon, so that they can kind of show their prowess above DeepSeek.
That's a really good point. And kind of touching on that, I feel like if you're a consumer, it's really hard to get this model that's hosted in the US, because I just learned that if you go to DeepSeek's website, you're basically sending your data directly to China, and their data laws and whatever their privacy is or lack thereof, or who knows. I haven't really read through the terms and conditions, so I don't want to make any assumptions here. But you would assume that, like, if you have your data, you'd probably rather send it to a U.S. company who's going to maybe sell it to someone else. But like, you would rather do that as far as like maybe control your privacy. But there's a kind of a little bit of a fork here, which is really interesting, is that because this model with that level of intelligence, you say, and is very useful and people are using, and I'm using it as well, is that because we have like sort of the recipe and the sauce, that means that US companies can take this model and then host it, privately here in the US, and then provide inference slash service so that you can make, a chat GPT like app that has this kind of model running that can follow either certain guidelines or local types of stuff. And I think private companies as well, if you're a private company, there's probably people looking into trying to maybe run this on their own servers or renting GPUs. Is that kind of what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good points there. I think in terms of the the cost, let's start with that, I guess. That's another threat to kind of maybe OpenAI and others in the short term, where you have this thing that maybe it even costs the same training cost as O1. Maybe it's even the same inference compute as O1, but uh, maybe they're not even necessarily selling it at below cost, but on the other side, OpenAI is simply selling O1 at very above cost, if you get what I mean. So OpenAI might just have very big profit margins on O1, for example, while DeepSeek is just selling closer to at cost. And whatever the situation is, they're selling it for much lower. That is going to, in some sense, take away customers from OpenAI, at least in the short term. And I think the fact of this being open source, though, like you said, not just the actual model weights and the trained model itself, but the research. This comes back to the hypothetical I said earlier of even if DeepSeek had this 10x training efficiency, then this and this. But I feel like even that can kind of be negated because even if this is a 10x training efficiency leap by DeepSeek, the fact that their research is open sourced for it now, it means that it could largely be replicated by the surrounding labs. And now kind of DeepSeek has even less of an advantage. And for the hypothetical I was saying to even be true, they would have to kind of get like another big efficiency leap against the Western labs on top of that, and then make sure to not give it to the West.
Ah, okay. And it's just kind of goes back to maybe what their philosophies are, because there's a difference between like Eastern philosophy and even Eastern medicine thinking versus Western philosophy and Western, types of thinking too, right? And what is it? What's the give and take? So that's an interesting insight, or perspective there, because sometimes it's just so hard to sift through the noise because there's just a lot going on, and for me, it's really hard to really understand, where are these models and kind of what the differences are. So I think one thing I kind of wanted to understand a little bit better is, there was a conversation with the GPT-4o models being like Omni. So like that means that like the model, you can put text in, you can have it generate video, have it generate like audio and so forth. And it's a little bit different than having it go through, I guess, different steps from like text to video, video back down to text. So it doesn't have to pass through, I guess, multiple models. Or maybe if you can explain a little bit of what that is, and then maybe kind of the comparative to the differences of what we could see currently with DeepSeek R1 or DeepSeek, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point of something that people are also missing lately. Of DeepSeek has this architecture and they released this model, but it still is lacking certain things that something like GPT-4o has in terms of the audio omni-modality, which basically means the architecture for 4o is said to actually be able to understand audio directly, and not just transcription of audio, but actual audio itself. For example, if you theoretically were to speak very slowly or very quickly, then it can actually know which one you are doing. It can identify things like tone of voice and such, and it can even express that back, can even speak to you, can even, they showed examples of, I think, like, please give me an audio of Mario hitting a coin, and it actually generates a sound that sounds like Mario hitting a coin.
Wow.
And a lot of these things that aren't like fully kind of rolled out to the public yet, but OpenAI has talked about in blog posts. And I think, like, remember that that was announced all the way back in May, I believe it was. Yeah, GPT-4o was announced in May.
Right.
And now at this point, I think, speaking of this, actually, DeepSeek just announced something today, I want to say. I don't know
Yes.
if you saw it, but
Briefly.
Janus 7B. Yeah. And this is actually partially omni-modal in the sense that they don't have the audio aspect, I think, but they do have the understanding of vision, but then it's also able to output images and generate images all with the same model.
Wow.
And so this is
Wow.
something that GPT-4o is said to be able to do as well, but it's just not released and rolled out to the public yet.
Oh,
But yeah, you could see here they already had a previous model a few months ago called Janus, and then a newer one here. And sorry, one second, I'm going to
yeah,
get my
yeah,
dog, so
yeah.
I think you might hear them
It's
crying.
okay. Yeah. So here's Janus down here in orange, and then you have Janus Pro 1B, the 1 billion parameter model, and then you have the Janus Pro 7B, which is that model there. And then here are the evals for the accuracy and the scores. Is where there's Pika
I'm
art.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow.
Yeah, and you could see their older version. I think that didn't even release that long ago. I want to say maybe a few weeks or a few months ago it was the original Janus model.
Holy.
But yeah, this is really interesting, and there was research from Meta that came out called Chameleon and another follow-up work called MoMA, which
Hmm.
is I want to say like almost a year old at this point, and is doing things very similar to this. However, it's still exciting that DeepSeek is coming out with this. I think maybe DeepSeek is kind of implementing some extra tricks and bells and whistles on top of those types of methods.
And this
But
is
you could
also
see
open
here in
source.
the
Yeah.
yeah, this is also open source. I think if you look at the middle image, especially the
Yeah.
ability to do text, sorry, the chalkboard, I mean,
Yeah.
the ability to do text with inside images, that's something that image generation models have historically had a lot of issues with, and it just kind of is funny and makes sense that something that's actually understanding and trained on a bunch of language as well as images is able to kind of just do that way better.
Oh, that's interesting. Wow. That is really, and this just literally came out today, like I don't think, like maybe an hour before the stream started. So,
Yep.
absolutely insane breaking news as far as what's going on, and this world moves incredibly fast as we can see. But I think it's just been really incredible to put this a little bit into context. It's really easy to jump on the fear train, especially since involves a lot of layers of complexity. And there could be many people who are just watching and tuning in today. So please just drop any questions that you may have, and we can see if we can answer them. So appreciate people who've been able to join on so far. And I think that, it's just kind of really interesting to hear people's feedback and opinions, because I'm still trying to learn about this. And I appreciate like LDJ is just kind of coming on to share his background and tell us a little bit of kind of what you do, LDJ.
Sure. So my background is I've been in AI for about 5 years, originally involved in a company called TTS Labs, where I led the process of a lot of development for different models for we specialized in basically voice specific models for streamers like on Twitch, and it would be something where viewers could donate with specific text, and then it would make it sound like the streamer saying that on the stream, or it'd say thank you, Ray Fernando, for subscribing, and it would say it in the streamer's voice without them actually having to say it itself.
Wow,
say,
wow,
say
wow.
say it themselves. And so that was something started around 2019, 2020. It's still going on today. And later on, I joined something called News Research, and that was something that's more LLM focused. And that's something where I was mostly focused on things like post training. And for people unfamiliar with what post training means, that essentially just means the process of kind of after you've already trained the model on the internet, the post training part is where you actually train it more specifically on how it should behave, how can it actually maximize its effective intelligence for the user, and its different attributes of how it does things.
Oh, cool. Wow. Yeah, that's super awesome, man. It's like just amazing their depth of background and just being in the industry, and to share. And I think if you haven't had a chance to follow LDJ, confirmed down below on X is I think where you hang out a lot, especially with in spaces. And for those who aren't familiar, if you are in the AI, like a lot of the AI community actually ends up kind of gravitating into X/Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter. And there's a lot of these informal spaces where something will happen like this, and people just hop in and start talking. Like, and that's kind of where I met LDJ, and I also met you on the Thursday AI podcast with Alex Volkov. An amazing
Mhm.
show. It goes into a lot of details of all the models. That's every Thursday morning. That's when they drop the show. So if you haven't had a chance, definitely check that out. I would definitely say. And so I think somebody had a question here about the what's the proof that it only took 6 million apart from what they say? Can we trust them? Is it noise? I think. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so on that, actually, I think maybe I could send you this calculator, this training calculator I was talking about earlier. Or is it
Cool. Cool.
possible I could easily share my screen or no?
Yeah. Yeah. You can just share.
Uh,
If you should share, and then I'll be able
okay,
to put it on the screen. Yeah.
here, let me try to be quick with this.
It's cool. Yeah. Also, it's kind of fun to see everyone's thoughts here. Hertzfeld Labs, welcome to the show. Awesome. Let's see. Is there?
So
There's.
I
Yeah.
guess the short answer while I pull this up
Mm-hmm.
is they since they published the research openly, you can actually quite easily do the calculations of roughly how much would it cost based on their method of training compute cost, which is actually like a pretty typical method of measuring it.
Mm-hmm.
And it does come out to, for my estimate, roughly in the range of like $5 million to $11 million, depending on how you like price the hours.
Mm.
But here, if I share my screen right now, which I think should hopefully work.
Yeah. So,
Okay, you
cool.
see it?
Yeah, let me see if I can put this on to the guest spot here. And then, whoops. Sorry, guest 2. And then let me assign you to guest 1 here and then put you into this screen share. Okay, let's see. I usually have a specific screen share for this view. Give me a second. Let me get this popped up here. Is it this one? Yeah, I have this thing, and I think I have screen share above it. Is it screen share? Yeah, guess 2. Here we go. Cool.
There we go. And as you see, I'm working, so adding this with tribute to it.
There's an
I think
audio
actually,
issue, by the way. I think it's kind of glitching out from your end.
yeah, I did hear on.
I think if you disconnect, I'm going to disconnect the screen share. Maybe it'll come back. And then it'll come back. Hello?
Hello, testing 1 2
Okay.
3.
Yeah, this is better. Huh. Interesting. When you share the screen.
Yeah, it's
Huh. Maybe you could try the screen share again. We'll see if that can kind of work.
okay. Here. Oh, I think notes when I shares gear backgrounds.
Yeah, I think the audio really just kind of gets glitchy. Like it just got glitchy again.
Okay, so there's a little toggle that says also share tab audio. I'm going to make sure to disable that.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's what it's doing. It's kind of
Okay.
okay. Perfect.
Testing 1 2 3.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, it's better now.
Nice. Sweet.
Yeah, so as you could see, I was adding some additions to this, but I made sure that this code is working and it's proper to the actual formulas for calculating training cost and flops.
Wow.
And here, for the most part, it's actually pretty basic calculation. You really just need 2 main variables: the active parameter count of the model, which in this case is about 38 billion for DeepSeek V3, if I remember right, and then about 15 trillion tokens for the amount of tokens during training. And then for H100, it seems to be actually maybe. Oh, I missed did I put an extra L
Sure.
or?
Yeah. TRI.
15 trillion. Okay, let me just put the full numbers. That should hopefully work.
It's like we can't accept commas.
And then 38 billion. Yeah, and you see here about
Wow.
$4.7 million training cost.
Oh my goodness.
And then yeah, so it's right about where the DeepSeek V3 paper says it is.
Okay.
Depending on how you calculate it, like there may be even being a little bit kind of humble, and it could even be like kind of a little bit lower than that, depending on how they're implementing some of their efficiencies.
So if you scroll down, it says estimate of 2026 GPT-5 scales in 2H, second half of 2025 or first half of 26. That's going to cost how much?
Yeah. So this is, like I was saying earlier, this would be, I think there's something wrong with the cost here.
Yeah.
Because it's saying the same cost as this.
So
there might be some bug there or something.
It's okay.
No, it's not calculated from the calculator code. This is something I told it to add manually as a card. So ignore this. This doesn't have anything to do with calculating.
It's a template.
It should be like 5 billion. It should say something closer to 5 billion.
5 billion for GPT-5. Oh my goodness.
Yes. So I mean, here we have. There's remember earlier how I was saying the factor of there is a somewhat predictable algorithmic advancement rate over time. And if you actually look at GPT-3 to 4, it is estimated by some people formerly at OpenAI, like Leopold Aschenbrenner, as well as some other people, that there's maybe around, you could estimate roughly around like 5x or 10x efficiency gain actually between GPT-3 to 4. And a lot of people think it's actually just like simply naive scale up alone. but there is actually several things like such as mixture of experts training, as well as something called instruct GPT that actually allows it to much more effectively like work in a chat manner, and those various things kind of uh, end up counting towards what you call these training efficiency gains.
Oh, wow.
And so what you can call when you combine let's say you have, for example, a 10x efficiency factor combined with a 100x increase in raw compute, you would roughly call that 1000x in effective compute, which basically means it's about the same capabilities as if you naively scaled up just 1000x alone with a raw, if that makes sense.
So you're saying like numbers to numbers, it's like adding additional, like tricks and things to do to get leverage out of the same compute, right? In some way, like,
Yeah, so
okay.
you could think of it in a sense. It's estimated that, let's say they didn't change anything between GPT-3 and 4 architecture or training recipe or anything like that,
Hmm.
and let's say they just naively scaled up the amount of tokens and parameters, then the the actual scale up that the capabilities roughly match to is, you could say, roughly a 500x or 1000x more compute model.
Wow.
And so with that, then something like, let's say, these upcoming models like $500 million scale, some people might say, oh, well, maybe that should be GPT-5 abilities because you have this, like 10x increase in raw compute, but then also this 10x efficiency advancement from something like DeepSeek V3. But I think in order to really feel like a full generation leap, you might need that kind of like DeepSeek V3 level of efficiency combined with this 100x raw compute to kind of really get a similar feel to that leap we had between 3 and 4.
Wow. Oh, okay. So this is making a little more sense. It's kind of getting harder for people to compare because raw cost really won't tell you that it is something that is this next generational leap. And then, like, not
Yeah.
necessarily more compute either, or more specific types of data. It's like a lot of combinations of things. And I guess just like anything, right? As we go, we learn, and everyone learns the new techniques. It becomes public, and everyone takes that and then rolls it into the next thing. And so, but you said there seems to be like sort of this clear delimiter of like, okay, yeah, that's definitely the 100x mark or the 1000x mark. And you would characterize that by.
Yeah, so I would say, like, for these models that might release, let's say, in second half of 2025 or first half of 2026, or at least finish training by then, it seems like those would, like, pretty much in whatever way you look at it, would match the defining factor of being like GPT-5 scale, and would like be deserving of that title.
Ah, I see.
But when you look at these shorter term things, like, sure, it is possible that they might have such big advancements and maybe such big improvements of how you use it that they might even call these earlier ones GPT-5. But it's even if they don't become like such a name, I wouldn't call that late, or I wouldn't say things are, like, delayed or anything like that, because I don't think it's really deserving of that title until you get to this point anyways here.
Okay. Yeah, that's amazing to kind of see how this is all playing out in this giant landscape of things. Yeah, I was
Mhm.
wondering if you want to kind of touch on anything else that has come to mind, or things that you've seen online that you kind of want to talk about. Because now we have about like 500 people plus on the stream, and I think it's just really amazing how um, we're all curious, we're all learning. I'm trying to build with AI, and I may not have a lot of technical details, but I always enjoy kind of chatting with you because you always just provide me a lot of insights and kind of cut through the nonsense from stuff I hear online.
Yeah, I think one of the most prevalent misconceptions, or I guess maybe hard to call it a misconception because it's not exactly a firm statement, but something that's been said a lot lately is that DeepSeek is just a side project, or like just a side project that a few quants decided to work on together. Um, and I would say that's probably not true in the way that people think it is, at least. It has been basically its own organization for a little over a year at this point, and kind of putting out already decently well-known open source models in the open source space for about a year. And they've been progressively doing more impressive things, originally doing things on the scale of like 1 billion parameter and 7 billion parameter based models, and then releasing more impressive things with some really cool small coding models that people use, including me back then. And they are, I think, I want to say on the DeepSeek V3 or R1 paper, it's something on the order of over 100 or 200 authors just on those papers. And so that is like similar scale to the amount of authors you had even on the GPT-4 paper, for example. And so this is a pretty well developed organization at this point already. It's been said that they've been even hiring some of the top people from top research organizations across Asia and top universities, and even poaching people from Alibaba and ByteDance and big companies like that. So I think they are a serious competitor. I don't think people should consider them just a company in a garage. What they are doing is very impressive. And yeah, I think we'll continue to see good research coming from them, even if they might not necessarily be continuing to match the very top frontier models that release from American labs over the next couple of years.
Oh, that's a really good note because bigger companies here in the U.S. like Meta, who are actively open sourcing things and providing stuff for the AI community, like have bigger teams as well, right? And they're very well funded, and they're like I guess kind of mission driven to put this out there so that folks can take a look at it. So where like in the U.S. kind of what's the similar I think I was talking about Meta, but like who else is kind of doing this type of stuff in the US?
Hmm. Um, so when you say this type of stuff, do you mean just open source research, or maybe like open source research specific to like reasoning models and things like that?
Yeah, I guess like there's who is I think yeah, or like what is the equivalent? Is there something like that here in the US? Like how people joke about DeepSeek, it sounds like, or maybe think it's serious. It's like, oh yeah, we're just a small team of researchers coming together, but it's now like a bigger thing. And like in the U.S., there's this big investment, from like to put stuff into AI, and I feel like there's a lot of different places where stuff is happening, but I kind of wanted to get your lay of the landscape of like how does it look like from a developer standpoint. Maybe if you're a college student in thinking about getting into this space in the US, where should they consider like studying or doing some side studying
Mm,
while they're in school to and maybe advance themselves? Like where maybe should they be focusing
mhm.
if they want to get in the space to like, have this like I don't know, I feel like this is like a big call to America engineers. Like if you're an engineer to and you really want to get in this space and make a big change, I think this is kind of your moment, right? So I feel like
Yeah.
there's a large landscape, and I'm kind of trying to think about what can help someone or where would you guide them?
Yeah. So I think in terms of the one you mentioned, like Meta, they're doing a lot of cool research, especially at the FAIR, which is called, I think it stands for Fundamental AI Research Lab. And that's where a lot of cool things like the Omni-modal research I was talking about earlier that they've open sourced, and a lot of the precursor research that's planned to go into future llama models. That's where a lot of cool things are happening there, and I think people should probably maybe apply or at least check out what they're doing to see if that's maybe a good fit for what they want to be a part of. And then you also have DeepMind, which they're not exactly known as like a top open source player, but in terms of published research, they do have a lot of cool published research and a lot of things that I would say a much higher frequency of publishing things than other labs of their caliber. And they also have even open sourced LLMs that are trained to decent capabilities of on the order of like 7 billion parameter scale, and I think maybe even a little bit larger. And those models are like called Gemma, and they have experimental versions of those on various architectures. You also have Allen AI and Cohere. I think they've been doing some cool work of just open sourcing models. Allen AI specifically has been doing really cool work with reasoning research and open sourcing their findings across that. And Nathan Lambert is a person Alan AI, who's been spearheading a lot of that work. And I'm not sure if that's actually Canadian or American, but I guess just North America overall, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's
yeah,
a
I
good point.
think I
Yeah.
mostly named all the ones that I could think of right there. Those are the main ones.
Oh, that's cool. That's super helpful as far as yeah, those folks, because this field is just, for me, it feels like it keeps getting wider and wider, and it's
Hmm.
for me, like a lot of my background, it's like, oh, I want to get into this and then explore AI models, and I mean, there's just so many different problems to solve in this space, from like like getting the models to train them, and then people making products that use these models. Distribution is a big deal, so getting these models actually put somewhere and then delivered onto devices and things like that. There's just distribution of just sending around these weights and so forth, and a lot of engineering problems just from here to there that can be solved. And these different companies are kind of doing these types of things. And I guess I encourage people, if you're tuning in today, just to tinker, start having some fun playing around. I feel like for me, learning how to prompt and understand what you're putting into these models and seeing what you can get back out can really teach you a lot about a little bit what's happening, and kind of show some of the core intelligence. You'll start to, for me, it's kind of been fun really being a prompt engineer to like put different things in and make these little templates in some ways. But that could be like the basis for an app, for a problem you solve every day for normal people and stuff. So yeah, that's really cool.
Mm.
Yeah. Wow.
Maybe if you want to start going maybe more deeper on things, you could pull up the DeepSeek R1 paper, and they have some cool charts that we could show
Hmm.
of just how things like, for example, how the length of its thinking kind of starts to naturally increase the more you train it.
Wow.
And it's effectively just the model is learning to more effectively use longer thinking times as it better learns to reason.
Whoa.
And here I think top right, if you click PDF somewhere in the
Yeah.
top right of, yep, there you go. Then just scroll down until you see like this big chart with like a line going from bottom left to top right.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. It's just length. So,
Yeah, it's
oh,
like a
here,
big
this one.
chart. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, further below.
Okay.
There we go. That
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you see on the y-axis it says average length per response. And so there it starts off around, like less than 2,000 tokens it's giving per response. And then by the end of that training, the average token length per response is, on the order of 10,000 words or 10,000 tokens. And just for people that are unfamiliar with what a token is, it's basically a word. It's like 3/4 of a word. It depends on like the tokenization method you're using. But here you could see that if you just want to read like the figure 3 description, and then you could read like the few sentences below that,
Oh,
right?
cool. Yeah, it says the average response length of DeepSeek R1 on the training set during the RL process. So this figure shows DeepSeek R1 naturally learns to solve reasoning tasks with more thinking time. And so I think it says meant through the training process. This improvement is not the result of external adjustments, but rather the intrinsic development within the model. Intrinsic development within the model. I think that's a really big
Yeah,
pause there, because that means that this is kind of that Frankenstein moment where you're like, it's alive kind of feeling comes out. And that means that the model itself is now figuring stuff out, which is kind of interesting, right? Imagine you making something and then it just kind of starts to take off on its own. I think that's kind of like the maybe what people at OpenAI saw when they started to understand this concept. And this concept, I guess, is kind of what we're seeing publicly here on this paper, which is really nice. DeepSeek
for
R1
sure.
naturally acquires the ability to solve increasingly complex reasoning tasks by leveraging extended test time computation.
And maybe the next sentence is probably worth reading too.
Yes, the computation ranges from generating hundreds to thousands of reasoning tokens, allowing the model to explore and refine its thought process in greater depth. That's
Yeah, I
incredible.
think that mainly summarizes it. Yeah. What you were saying about maybe this is what OpenAI people saw, they did pretty much confirm in they uploaded a video to their YouTube of basically like a kind of round table style talk of a bunch of people that worked on O1. And one of the things they did mention is one of the aha moments for them was they did mention how at some point they realized that the model was just kind of naturally developing with the ability to like start questioning its own reasoning processes and then refine it from there. And like just like the DeepSeek people are saying here, like without having anything that explicitly enforces the model to do that, or without intentionally trying to get the model to do that necessarily, it just kind of ends up through this reinforcement learning process to figure out like, wait a second, like I should actually like question this strategy and like and think about another strategy and so forth.
I see. And so for those who are kind of getting new to this, it could be a little bit French and stuff. Like reinforcement learning just means that somebody is there to verify the output and then give the output a reward or a score that this is good. And then that way, next time when it
Or
kind
a
of comes,
system.
or system. Ah, okay.
Yeah, so like in this case, it's actually more so like the form of RL that most people are maybe familiar with, like you were describing, is where the human is giving feedback. But in these processes, it's actually more like non-human systems are giving feedback, or even the AI itself giving feedback. And so you have, for example, things like functional math verification systems built into the training, for example, to where it's actually able to objectively verify if it's correct or not, and then rewarding the model like live during the training process itself of like
Ah,
doing that. And then so it can immediately kind of reinforce and go into that feedback loop of improving itself without having to wait this long process of having a bunch of human labelers label it, right?
I see.
And there's that combined with more kind of general feedback mechanisms that even Meta has researched a lot into in the past few months, which is basically what you can call RLAIF, which is just reinforcement learning from AI feedback. And Anthropic actually has talked about using this a lot too for their models.
Holy
And
guacamole.
uh, for the most part, it's really just like for things that you can't really objectively verify much, you literally have the AI model itself or another AI model actually like give a judgment of, hey, like is this a good response, or is this is this meeting like a certain criteria of what the creators are desiring, right? And then it
Oh.
goes from there.
So, if we think about this, I like to try to anchor my thinking into other concepts that I know. So, one thing I've been using a lot is ChatGPT's O1 Pro models. And I notice it takes a longer time to think. And I'm thinking about the number of steps in this scale, right? So, if it's very similar
Hmm.
to this type of thing, when Sam Altman says it's, even though we charge $200 a month, we're still losing money on this. Can you see how this can be true, actually, given the calculations?
Okay. I think something to clear up about the ChatGPT Pro subscription is the fact that I think a lot of the most of the value within that is actually not so much the O1 Pro model, but it's rather you get unlimited advanced voice mode, okay? You get unlimited 4.0, you get unlimited O1 access, and all of those are limited in the Plus plan. For you only get unlimited with $200 per month, and
Got
then
it.
I think even unlimited slow generations with Sora, and then there's a cherry on top of O1 Pro, and then now an extra cherry on top of Operator.
Oh, right.
So I think a lot of it is I ran some numbers, and it's actually not too hard if you really just are a power user for a few hours per day. You can really like end up using like over $1,000 of effectively advanced voice mode and O1 API costs in the Pro subscription for just $200 per month. And so
Oh.
I think it's a lot of people like somewhat abusing the system there. Not necessarily abusing because it's meant to kind of use it as much as you can.
Ah,
But yeah, I
wow.
think they just kind of have it priced in this way with the rate limits at the certain rates for like, of course these costs are going to fall, right? These operating costs for OpenAI are going to fall. And so even though they might be kind of hurting on the pro subscription right now, it's only a matter of time, maybe even months from now, that they'll already be in a profit.
That makes sense with the new investments of the new models, and it's kind of this interesting, um, almost like a Mobius. It's like it
Yeah,
turns
feedback
it,
loop.
yeah, feedback loop. Yeah, huh? That's really really cool. My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective as far as sometimes it's really hard to relate and get caught up in the noise of things. So there's a lot of different things that we cover, and I feel like is like America cooked? Are they like?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I think even if you kind of make the more optimistic case for a company like DeepSeek and others in China, you still need, for example, at least like a $500 million training run to match America's $5 billion training run. And those $5 billion training runs in America are likely going to happen, and likely even within the next 2 years or sooner, and or even sooner than 18 months. And I think when you have at that scale, I was actually just doing some rough napkin math with a friend recently, and assuming that they're not able to smuggle hundreds of thousands of H100s, which, maybe that would be a wrong assumption. I don't know. I'm not very confident in that, but let's say they're not able to do that. They would end up needing somewhere on the order of millions of like millions of their internal Chinese chips in order to match what like one of these training runs in the next 18 months in the West are going to be capable of. Maybe
Um,
even like north of 10 million in some sense. And actually that might be pushing it. Maybe like let's say north of like 5 million roughly is what I
Whoa!
estimated.
Wow!
And then like you do the math of, can the chip fabs that exist in China even produce that amount of chips in a year? And it seems like the answer might actually even be no for that. So it seems like they either have to move very fast and or like get to a lot of H100s in the country, maybe by starting some shell companies in India and Bangladesh, and then importing the H100s from those countries into China. Or it might even just be simply a matter of NVIDIA able to supply enough of the lower class H800s to China that enable them to get there. I guess we would have to see what the restrictions for that end up being on America's side.
Wow! Wow! That is incredibly insightful, and I love that this is just not like crazy theory, but it's actually trying to approach this from an engineering standpoint of trying to
Mhm.
calculate this, what's been published by them, looking at it from the very detailed level and trying to make these better decisions and try to get a really true understanding. So I feel like a lot of people may want to reach out to you to learn more about, how they can work with you to better understand, not only this problem, but like maybe other problems that they have. So what's the best way that people can get in contact with you?
Yeah, so on LDJ confirmed, that is my Twitter, and people could DM me there. I also have a blog. It's LDJ AI, I think it's called. I actually just recently started it, so actually let me double check on the name of that. Um,
The Substack?
yeah, yeah, just LDJ AI. Yeah. So that's my Substack. If people want to check out my blog post, I only have one there. But Ray liked it a lot, so maybe some of you viewing this might like it too. And yeah, I'm also available for AI consulting. I've consulted various stealth labs and investment firms, and if you're interested in just having a conversation with me in that type of way, then yeah, feel free to reach out and ask me about it.
Yeah, definitely check it out. Very detailed, very thoughtful. I feel like you're one of the few people in the industry that's really taken that time to think things very clearly. You don't not and just kind of trying to objectively look at things, which is what I really appreciate, especially trying to on X or Twitter, and hopping on these spaces to just talk about this exactly as it comes out and share these insights, for free and stuff, but also privately for those who are looking to understand maybe what the business impact is going to be for you if you're building with these models and trying to get them scaled up, and then kind of what problems you can solve. So, yeah, LDJ, awesome show. I really appreciate you kind of coming on and helping me understand this type of thing, but I think it's also helping others understand the space. And for those who are just tuning in, or if you're just kind of following, I'll make sure you follow him. LDJ confirmed right down below with the handle there. And then Ray Fernando 1337. I'm just trying to explore this world of AI, share some information as I go, and kind of answer some of these questions that are in my mind, but also burning questions that other people have too. So awesome show. Any last thoughts or anything you want to share before we close it out?
No, this was fun, and I think we should do another one another time. And it's fun talking to you in this format, and I think we can help inform people on a lot of things this way.
Yeah, it's cool. It's so awesome. So like totally cool. So thanks for tuning in, y'all, and make sure you stay subscribed and updated, and you'll be notified when we publish new shows and so forth. So stay tuned, and I'll see y'all later. Peace, y'all.